Hello and welcome to WNBA Courtside. It's me, Cyrus. I'm here with Lethabo and Playoffs K. Nthabiseng has the day off this week. Guys, welcome to the show. It's going to be fantastic. We know we've got all the action coming up. Can you believe the WNBA regular season ends this weekend? Lethabo, I know you're going to be heartbroken.
Oh my gosh, there's so much playoff action. I'm not going to get sleep, guys. Spare a thought for me. And
that is what they should do. I think that's exactly what the WNBA should do. They should be looking out for all of us. Kaunda, you've had a good week. You've been watching your guys, the Lakers, do well in the NBA. And your sisters in the WNBA, the Sparks, are also doing not too badly. So I'm assuming you're also feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, it's been a great week because I've been battling Lee on the low, as you know, number 23 at the Lakers playing against number 0 at the Rockets. So I've been battling Lee on the low, and I've been like,
she didn't even know.
I know, because that's why it's on the low. She didn't know, but I was like, me and Lee are going at it. Maybe she doesn't know.
Yeah, that's true. We know how you are, Lethabo. You don't let these things go to rest. But let's go into our topic this week. We're actually talking about what our picks would be for the All-WNBA first and second teams. With the season coming to a close, it really is that time of the season, it's that wonderful time of the year where we get to look at who our favorite players are, who the best players are, and sort of pick the teams that would make up the first team and the second team. Now, we've all made our picks off screen, so we're going to, reveal them to each other on the show this week. They always say we should let the ladies go first. Lethabo, are you keen to go first with your picks? And we'll start with second teams.
We're starting with second teams. Okay.
Let's start with second teams. We build it up.
Okay.
Okay, so in my second team, I have Natasha Howard, I have Arike, I have Candace Parker, I have Nafisa Collier, and I have Alyssa Thomas.
Ooh, that's a pretty strong second team. Some very, very big calls to be dropping into the second team there. I think I know where your first team is going with that. So you're saying Arike in your second team, this is the WNBA scoring leader, is only making your second team.
Yes. It was a hard decision. It was a really hard decision, but yes.
Oh, look, I think you're going to have to give some context for what made you think these people should be in the second team. Is it because they weren't good enough for to beat out your first teamers? Or did you just think this is they're not just there yet?
Well, yeah, basically because I had my first teamers and I was like, and I'm not moving with my first team. But I was like, these are still people that do deserve credit for their hard work and effort. The teams ones is a little bit more difficult than MVP because at least MVP I usually use the framework of the team, how well the team is doing first, and then looking at like how the player impacts the team. Whereas this one is kind of based on individual performance, and sometimes individual performance stomps team performance, but then I also consider narratives, like what your season narrative is. And so the reason why Arike doesn't necessarily make my first all team is like, well, you're scoring champion, congrats. But the Dallas Wings are barely making it to the playoffs.
Okay. I mean, that's a good narrative thing. I'm going to put up a graphic here of the previous WNBA first and second teams. That's from 2018 and 2019. Now, obviously, we're seeing some repeat names there. So if you look at the sort of right-hand side, you'll see all of the second teamers. From 2018, you had Courtney Van Der Slooth, Skylar, Diggins-Smith, Maya Moore, Candace Parker, Brittany Griner. And then last season, you had Odyssey Sims, Diamond DeShields, Neko Ogumike, Jonquel Jones, and Liz Cambage. If we're looking at all of those in terms of our second teamers, I don't think a lot of us are going to have any of those players in even our first or second teams. Now, Kaunda, you've heard Lethabo give her reasons for why she's picked her second team. I want to know what your second team is, because I've got a pretty good second team.
Well, look, Cyrus, Lee, it was a tough one because there's so many great players in the WNBA. And when I looked at top 10, I was like, wow, this is going to be a hard one. But I had to agree with Lee on that one. Arike makes my second team. Arike Ogunbowale. I know she's a scoring leader, but I also, on that one, it was a mixture of team performance as well as preference. Because when you see my first team, why? Because I was also saying, okay, I need a guard, and I need some forwards. So I was looking at team as in team, right? And then in my second team, another one that might surprise you, Duana Bona made my second team, and some of you might have put her in the first team. And Nafisa Collier made my second team. Alyssa Thomas made my second team, and based purely on preference and the fact that I believe in this woman, Skylar Diggins-Smith made my second team.
Okay. Good calls. Really interesting ones. I see both of you dropping Arika down. Now, is this also a narrative thing for you, Kaunda? Did you just think maybe your first team was too strong? What is your reasons behind that?
Behind that, look, there were just so many contenders for that first team, and I only had 5 slots, so as the African coach K, I was like, look, it's a toughie. And like originally, Arike was in my first team, but you see who took her place when you see which dominant guard made it into my first team. Well, because she was in the first team, then I sort of had like a discussion with myself, and I said, okay, sorry, Arike, you're still coming, but this other guard has experience.
I think you need to look at some of these graphics that we have right here in terms of the points leaders, rebounds leaders, assist leaders, steals, blocks, field goal percentage. All of these things are really important, Kaunda. I understand why you and Lee have done what you've done in terms of the players that you've picked, but I also think that when it comes down to the first team and the second team, often, and it's because of the voting that really people sort of start to filter down into the other teams. The thing for me here is, like you say, making up how many guards you want and how many forwards you need. So I think we generally need 2 backcourt players and 3 frontcourt players. So I think you've got a nice mix there. Somebody like Duana Bona is a really interesting one because she's both a guard and a forward. So she's a bit of both. And so you can almost sneak her in as a forward if you want to have that sort of scoring touch. So I'm going to run you through my second team. This might actually, it might shock some of you because there's some really big names in this, right? So my second team, I have Diana Taurasi in my second team. I have Skylar Diggins-Smith in my second team.
Shame.
I have Candace Parker in my second team, Duana Bona in my second team, and Maisha Hines-Allen in my second team. And the reason behind all of this really is I've looked at it in terms of the numbers. I haven't looked at league performances being a key thing because for me, when it comes to second teams, you have to have the stats. In fact, not even just the second teams, the first teams too. It's about stats more than it is about league position. People want to know who you as a player are. It's an individual thing. I think this is where the MVP conversation sort of muddies the waters because everyone says, well, how can you be the best player in the league and your team is like, not even making the playoffs? But for me, to make an all WNBA team, you got to be a scoring leader or an assists leader or a rebounds leader, but if you're managing to put together a whole host of different stats, and I'm going to give you some stats now. Diana Taurasi is number 1 in 3-pointers made this season. She's 5th in points scored and 7th in assists. Those are great numbers, but for me, it wasn't enough to unseat the people that I have in my first team. I look at Skylar Diggins-Smith. She's 7th in points per game, 9th in assists, and 5th in 3-pointers made. So they're doing some really good shooting at the Mercury. The Sparks, you have the rebounds leader in there in Candace Parker. She's also the 5th most efficient player in the WNBA, 6th in 3-point percentage, and 8th in assists. So the numbers are really all making the case for them. I think let's go around the wheel and really look at who the first teamers are. We started the second teams off with you, Lethabo. We're going to start the first teams off with you.
Okay, mine is a little awkward, but let's go.
Yes.
I have Arsha Wilson, obviously. Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, Duana Bona, Courtney Van Der Slooth.
Good picks. I think we're going to have a lot of those. Kaunda, just go for it. Let's hear yours, Kaunda, because I think let's show all the cards and then we'll discuss why we've chosen the way we have.
Okay. So the reason why Arika didn't make my first team because Diana Taurasi made my first team, and that's my key point guard right there. Then Brianna Stewart, you can't have a first team without Stewie. Asia Wilson, you also can't have a first team without Asia Wilson. Courtney Van Der Slooth leading the league in assists. You know how I love assists.
Yeah.
She made my first team. And shame on you, Cyrus. Double shame on you. Because my fifth pick is Candace CP3 Parker, who you put in your second team.
I totally get why you would do that. And this is, now, listen to why I've chosen the people I've chosen in my first team. My first team has Arika Ngumbowale, number one in points per game. She's also fourth in three-pointers made a game, ninth in steals a game, and 15th in assists. So she's not an assister, but she's up there in terms of scoring, and she's way up there. I mean, like, she's averaging at least 2.5 points more than the second best player.
Yep.
Then you've got Courtney Van Der Slooth, the number one assist leader. We've all agreed on that. Van Der Slooth has to be in the WNBA all WNBA first team.
Yeah.
Asia Wilson and Brianna Stewart are just no-brainers. They're absolutely no-brainers. I mean, when you're looking at points per game, they're second and third. When you're looking at blocks, you've got Asia second in blocks. You've got Stewie is seventh in blocks. You've got Asia third in rebounds. Stewie ninth in rebounds. You've got Asia, the most efficient player in the WNBA. You've got Stewie, the second most efficient player. And this is the way it will be surprising for you guys, because my third pick in the first team is Nafisa Collier. And I've chosen Nafisa Collier primarily because when I looked at her stats, and in terms of where she is leveling out across all of the different categories, she's a lot better than some of the other guys who are in the forward slots. So for instance, she's number 2 in rebounds. She's number 3 in steals. Yep. She's the third most efficient player in the WNBA, right? She's 8th in blocks. She's 12th in points per game. But when you look at all of those other stats, for me, if I compare that to the other forwards, I just think, okay, so second in rebounds, that's behind Candace Parker. Candace is ahead there. But then she's more efficient than Candace because she's third, whereas Candace is fifth. But then I'm looking at block shots. Candace doesn't even appear in the top 10, whereas Nafisa does. And that's a big thing for me in terms of defense. And Nafisa's third in steals. So already defensively, she's way up there. Now, if I have to choose between Candace and Nafisa, I'm going Nafisa. That's my reasoning. I don't know what your guys' reasons are for the ones you've chosen.
But how is Nafisa doing? And I hate to, bang on the Nafisa drum, but how is she doing in points and assists?
No, points-wise, she's not doing the greatest. She's up. I mean, I think I said 12th in points.
And assists?
And in assists, she doesn't even feature. She's not in the top 20.
So definitely she's not marking that scoreboard. Enough respect on the defensive side, she's making her mark, but she's not really marking that scoreboard, right? In terms of making points get made and making points herself.
Is it important to do that when you're already base leveling out in terms of all of the other stats? Because you've got Asia and you've got Stewie as your other point scorers there. I totally understand your point, right? And I see why you would go for Candace Parker. And I mean, in terms of Lethabo selections, like Duana Bonner being in the first team, that's not a bad call, right?
No, not at all.
So Lethabo, what are your thoughts around the way the teams are constructed? Because do you feel your first team is a lot more, shall we say, balanced in terms of the playing styles and the people that you have in there? Considering that you don't have to have a small forward and a power forward and a center, it's just forwards, people who can play all of those positions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was also putting into consideration like the narratives. Like I said, I think maybe I'm different in that sense. Like I was looking at the players individually, their stats, and then I was looking at the narrative and how they matter to their teams. Yeah. And then lastly, I was thinking about like, okay, what does it look like if they were to be an actual team? Yeah. So that was how I came up with Duana Bonner, making it into my list, is because it's just like, well, her and Alyssa Thomas literally carried the Suns this season. It could have been disastrous, and it wasn't. It wasn't a complete disaster. I mean, if anything, they're looking better these days.
Yeah. And everybody's sort of saying this is the sort of new Duana Bonner, and she's like a 10-year vet. So it's crazy to see her putting up these kinds of scoring numbers and having this kind of contribution in her team. I think that, when you look at it, for me, it's so tough to leave out the scoring champion from a first team. It really is for me, regardless of how many years they've been in the league. So, yes, you've got Diana Taurasi doing incredible things, but I just look at it and I say, do I leave out Courtney Van Der Slooth? I can't do that. And so it really came to a straight shootout between the scoring champion versus the rest. And as good as Taurasi is.
You see, Cyrus, for me, right, with me, Diana Taurasi took that number 1 spot, the point guard spot, right? Because based on recent performance, experience in the league, appearances in those first teams, how many times has she been up there where she appears in the first team?
That's
14,
true.
15 times. So Diana Taurasi
she's been there a heck of a lot.
Took the first spot for me, right? And then I was looking at who would I put at the 2 spot? I'd put Courtney Van Der Slooth because she can shoot like from the perimeter very well, right? And then I thought to myself, at the 3 spot, I'd put the WNBA's LeBron James, A'ja Wilson. And at the 4th spot, I'd put Breanna Stewart. She would dominate that 4th spot. And in the center, I'd put Candice, CD3. How you doing in Los Angeles? Parker. So that was how I put my 5 together.
So you
and I thought
built
that
a
would be
team.
A solid team. Well, it is called the first team.
Yeah, the thing about it though is that first team doesn't necessarily play. It's not the all-star game, But I think that they try to look at...
But you know where I was going with it, right?
Exactly. And this is what's beautiful about this, is that when you look at the teams that we've all chosen, they could all play as a unit. And I think that we've got interchangeability in there. I think Nafisa could cover center. She'd be a bit small for it. But then you could also switch out and have Stewie go into center and have Nafisa play power forward, and then A'ja play small forward. So it's really interchangeable. And when you've got somebody like A'ja Wilson and Breanna Stewart there, they give you rebounding, they give you scoring, they give you... It's just incredible. The only thing that has really, really astounded me is A'ja Wilson takes no threes. Like, I was looking for the 3-point shooting stats. There are none. She hasn't taken one this season. So you just think, okay, this is an incredible thing. So everybody watching, make sure you... No, of course it
it's
isn't
not a
for
big
her.
thing in Vegas at the moment. In Vegas, it's not a big thing at the moment. And
It's going to be in the playoffs. It's going to be in the playoffs. You've already seen Giannis. Out of the blue, you're trying to come up with 3-pointers you haven't been shooting all season. What are you doing?
When the defense forces you to do things you're uncomfortable with, this is the kind of stuff that happens. So I'm just trying to get everybody who's been watching the show, give us in the comment section who you think your first teamers and second teamers would be, and we'll also try and engage with you on social media as well. Now, we're going to leave our first, second team discussion alone there because we've got a couple more things to discuss before we end the show. And I suppose let's start with something that's always a really intriguing thing for me, and that is our WNBA Players of the Week. As you can see, we've got our players coming in, and none other than Duana Bonner and Skylar Diggins-Smith. Those are our 2 for the Eastern and the Western conferences. Bonner's stats are just really, really good. 25 points a game, 7 rebounds a game. Her free throw percentage is also just way up there. You got Skylar has 26 points a game, and she's having 5.7 dimes a game. 5.3 dimes a game with 5.7 rebounds a game. I mean, these ladies are really showing what they're made of. Now, Kaunda, Skylar's taken a little bit of time to get used to how things work in the Mercury. Do you think that she's now fully acclimatized and this is the time for them to shine?
I think Skylar can always get better. I always believe every player can get better. Some might argue that Michael Jordan could have never gotten better, but I believe he could have gotten better. But let's go back to the WNBA in its current form. Skylar Diggins-Smith, I think, me and Lethabo actually spoke about this offline and online about the fact that when she first arrived in Phoenix, it was about who's going to be the primary ball handler. Is it going to be her? Is it going to be Taurasi? Is she going to be able to fit into that trifecta, that was created? And I think now she's settling in. She can do better numbers than this. She will give you even 28, 30 points a game if given more touches. In terms of rebounds, I think she sits around there. And assists, she can do a few more assists. Maybe she'll give you 6 assists, per game. But I think she's settling in. I think that Arizona Heat now, she's getting used to it, after spending so much time in Dallas there. Well, I suppose Dallas is hot too.
It's similar.
Yeah, it's similar. Just more Cowboys in Dallas.
I don't know. They wear Stetsons pretty much in a lot of parts of the country. Lethabo, we've had Duana Bonner in your first team. Now we see her as a player of the week. There's some incredible things happening in the WNBA. Are you happy with what you've seen from Duana Bonner?
I mean, all things considered, yes. I think she's really had a stellar season, despite the fact that And I said Phoenix. Despite the fact that the Canadian Suns came in hobbling, I really am interested to see what this team will look like next year. I really do think they could probably contend again once you have John Cal Jones in the mix. And probably, depending on what they do in the off season, to get another scorer. They need another scorer. They really could be a formidable front. But I really do like what we've been seeing from her. She's really actually picked up a lot. She did it relatively quickly, right? Unlike Skylar, who took a while to integrate, she was immediately like, go, you know? So, I mean, technically she should have gone this sooner, actually. But hey.
I like that call. If you get it, you get it, right? It doesn't matter if it's right at the beginning or right at the end. You got to get those Player of the Week awards. So we've got Games of the Week coming up. This is the last round of regular season games. They end on Sunday, and there's some pretty big ones. Because if we look at the standings at the moment, you've got the Storm leading the way still at the moment, but they could still be caught up by the guys who are behind them in the Aces, the Sparks, and a few of the other teams. I think Aces and Sparks being the primary ones. But that battle for who makes the number 2 seed is really going to be intriguing, because obviously we've got those teams that are battling it out in terms of the Aces and the Sparks, and there's only like half a game separating them. So it's insane that the Aces and the Sparks played this weekend, and this is what we're seeing in terms of the games to watch. You know, you've got Saturday action, 9 o'clock Central African time, Aces taking on the Sparks. That could be the one that decides who becomes the second seed. But the Aces are playing a back-to-back because they're also playing Sunday, and they play the Storm. Now, whether or not the Storm will play a full-strength team is going to be a really interesting one to see, because they would have already, at that stage, they should know whether or not they're going to be the number 1 seed. If that hasn't been sorted out yet, and the Aces win their game against the Sparks and close that gap to the Storm, this could be another one where number 1 is playing number 2 to see who finishes off the season as number 1. Which of those games are you most looking forward to seeing, Lethabo? And then we'll ask you, Kaunda.
Ooh, you know what? I think Sparks Aces will be a lot closer than Seattle Aces.
I think I can agree with that.
I would say Sparks Aces.
Sparks
probably
Aces.
going to be. It's going to be the dog fight.
Your Saturday is going to be a mess. You're going to be watching so much basketball. You know, so it starts with Sparks.
I'm going to
Aces
turn into a ball. That's what's going to happen. Like after the game's
orange
over,
ball.
I'll literally just turn into a ball and start bouncing around the apartment. That's what's going to happen.
I think that's what happens to Kaunda if you feed him after dark. Kaunda, so which of these games are you most looking forward to? Obviously, the Sparks are playing, so I'm assuming you'd be looking towards that. But what are you expecting from these games? Do you think this could be 2 wins on the trot for the Aces?
Look, this is what I feel, Cyrus. I think the Aces are going to come out guns blazing against the Sparks because I think they want to secure that number 2 spot. And then maybe depending on which version of the Storm shows up, I don't think they'll go in that hard against the Storm, because by then maybe they would have known whether they are solid second or they're fighting for a top spot. So I think they're going to go hard at the Sparks, but they'll probably save a little energy in the Seattle Storm game, depending on which Seattle Storm shows up. But I'm going to watch both games.
I mean, we got it, right? Because this is the WNBA. We're watching this action because we love it. We've come to the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching WNBA Courtside. It's been fantastic. Make sure you like this video. Smash the like button, as the youngsters are saying these days, all these gray hairs. Make sure you subscribe and just keep watching the show. We love the WNBA. We know you should too. From Lethabo, from Kaunda, it's goodbye. And from me, we will see you again in the playoffs.